Greetings. My name is Ruban Roberts, and I'm the CEO and founder of RER Consulting Enterprise and Amplified Community Resources. Today, we have a special guest with us, Representative Felicia Robinson. Good day, Felicia Robinson. How are you today, Rep?
I am blessed and highly favored. That's what I always say, and what I say, and too anointed to be disappointed. That keeps
Yes.
me going.
Yes. Now, not only is Representative Robinson a state representative, she's also, and first, an educator. And so she has over 29 years of experience in educating from the classroom all the way up to being the principal and in the leadership positions. So today we want to talk about just some of the laws that, some of the things that happened as far as the Florida State Board of Education, how they came up with some new ideas about AP African American Studies and how that affects our community and how it affects everyone. First, I want to say to you is that we must understand that African American history in America is American history. Anything that happened in this country on this soil or leading up to being here is a part of our history. And the truth should always be told. We know that the truth sometimes is not as pleasant and it's not as palatable as we would like it to be. But nonetheless, we need to know the truth. So today, Representative Robinson, I want you to talk about this ruling that the Board of Education made about the AP African American Studies, and then what is the ripple effect of this going forward?
Yes, I'll be more than happy to. So, College Board, which is advanced placement, they have different subjects that we teach in our schools that allow students to take a course in high school but can receive a college credit. So that's what AP is. So AP African American History was a course that they were bringing on board that several students in the state of Florida was anxiously waiting to take and were willing to participate in. However, the course that was presented, the State Board of Education deemed that they did not agree with the curriculum and did refuse to accept it. That was the first thing. However, the College Board went back and they did make some changes and resubmitted it. However, up until this date, it still has not been accepted. And that's a major problem because, as you stated, America is formed with all different types of cultures. That is our foundation. That's what we were formed as. Although we all did not come here in the same way, we all did not agree to come here. But when we look at what America is and what America stands for, it's a country for all. However, when we are picking and choosing what courses and what type of history can be taught, that's a problem. And as you stated in your opening statement, all history that happens in America is American history. And it's really a problem when now people want to take take bits and pieces of history out to not tell. One of the major problems with that is we know that when people do not know their history, they tend to repeat their history. And
That's right.
America has had some very harsh and harmful and cruel things that have happened in the past, and we do not want them to reoccur. So it is very important for not only African American children to know about their history, but it's important for all children and people to know about African American history because it's not something that we definitely want to repeat. So that has happened on that end. And as of this point, like I said, they have not addressed or have given the College Board any insight on whether they're going to accept that course or not. And that's a major problem.
So let me
However,
ask you.
there, Mhm.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me ask you now. There was a work group, right? That were working on putting this thing together. And what happened with that work groups in their and their findings. Tell us a little bit about that, so we'll know a little bit about that backdrop.
So now that's the other part, which I'm glad you brought it up, because we're also talking about African American standards. So the AP course was actually a course that was going to be given to advanced placement students. But
Right.
now we also had what was created a couple of years back was an African American task force. And this task force was created to ensure that African American history was taught in our schools. So the task force had been there. However, and I would say that the Florida Department of Education have curriculum or standards that African American history should be taught in schools. Although I can say that, to my knowledge, at least not across the state, it has been being taught. So this particular year, they decided they were going to take a look at the task force. And in taking a look at the task force, they made some changes. Now, you would think that if you're making changes, you would make changes for the better. And because I'm always fair, I would say when you look at these new Florida standards, there are some standards in there that were improved and are good. However, this work group, they did this, because I want to always say things properly and correct. This work group, with the good or the improvement, also put in there things that was just plain out a lie, is not true, and it's just simply bad to put in standards that is going to future educate our children. And so to just point them out, when in these new standards, as many have heard and you hear, they're saying that slavery was a benefit. And so that becomes so concerning on so many different levels, because like I can say, you actually say that hurting someone intentionally, being cruel to someone intentionally, dehumanizing someone intentionally, somehow benefit that person? You really want to teach your children that? And so, yes, by them saying that slavery may have benefited us as Black people is a major problem. We talk, and I can just go on and on how you can take that piece and really cause serious harm physically, emotionally, and mentally to the future growth of our students. And so that's where the pushback has come majorly, is because we're saying we want you to tell history as it is. Don't take away from it. Don't lie about it. And because if you do that, then you ultimately are hurting the future of our children.
I agree so much with what you're saying, and I want to I want to spend a little time here. We also do mental health and wellness work, and we're doing a tour, a mental health and wellness tour at the HBCUs with the the viewing of the film, the documentary Hush. In fact, we'll be up at Edward Waters College on September 21st. And so I say that because in addition to the education or the miseducation that's happening, there are feelings of hate and violence that comes about. And so just recently, there was a mass shooting in Jacksonville. And then that mass shooting, it was actually initiated. They were going to start it at Edward Waters College, but because they had security staff that was very vigilant, they thwarted those efforts, and the person moved to another area that had large numbers of Black people. And so, as we talk about the importance of this history, I want you to talk about the trauma, and I want to talk about what is the role of the school district and the parents and the legislators to understand that these actions, actually fuel the actions of those folks who want to exact violence on people who are innocent, people that they have no contact with, people that they don't know, they don't know from Adam, but because of just their skin color, you want to wish them death. And so, talk about how talk about how the power of legislation, the power of these state boards have, some terminal outcomes if you're feeding people with bad intentions.
And
Talk
you
about
hit
that.
the nail right on the head. Actions has consequences. Legislation has consequences. And exactly what you said, the types of legislation, doing what he did with the AP history course, doing what's happening with this Florida standards, and just other pieces of legislation that tends to be targeted against the African American community, Black people, or not, and in some cases, other groups. When you start targeting different class of people or different cultures through policy and legislation, yes, you give a tone to make people feel that it's okay to discriminate, to harass, to attack that group. They feel this allowed because the policies and legislation that have been formed makes them feel that way. And so that's why it's so important for us all to pay attention and to push back, to have these conversations. That's why it's so important for us to have our children educated, but to also have others educated so that they understand. When you know people or you build, we always talk about relationships. When people can have relationships with other people, then it makes things smoother. You get better results. They're able to use each other for resources. But by you keeping a division between these people, you can't have that. And so when I talk about what the state has done in the last few sessions on some of the policies that tends to target a certain group of people, this is where we're seeing actions that happen like what's happened in Jacksonville. Because now, although some people might have had some issues, they wasn't necessarily openly acting on them. But when you create policy and legislation that makes it seem that it's okay and that it's allowed, then people don't hold back. So it's very important for us as a community to push back. What I always say is, yes, we have 120 legislators in the House. And we only really have 35 that's fighting for everyday Floridians. But what I tell people, or what I want people to actually hear, is that it's more of us here on the ground. It's a whole bunch of everyday Floridians. We just need you all to pay attention and then to take action, because that's the only way we're going to change this. Let your representatives know that this is not acceptable. We are not going to stand for this. And so what I've been trying to do is to come up with action steps that everyday Floridians can take and do on an everyday basis to push back against these types of legislations that has happened. And when I say legislations, we talked about the AP history course, we talked about the Florida standards, but there's even book bans. We've been banning books. And when you look at the type of books that's been banned, they all focus on what? One particular culture, one particular group. Very few venture out. But what I need people to understand is that that's what's happening now. But tomorrow, it can be your culture. Tomorrow, it can be someone else. And so we need people to unify and push back and say, no, this is not acceptable. They ban books under a piece of legislation that says that you don't want anything that makes you feel uncomfortable. Well, we're all
Or the
different.
library should be empty if that's the case.
And
Because in
that's where
every
I
library we find things, someone can find something that's uncomfortable for to them. And Amanda Gordon, I cannot understand how they banned that book. But not only the books, I want you to go back to the books, but just women's reproductive rights.
I
What?
mean, it's exactly. And so so what I'm saying is things are happening that most people do not agree with.
Right.
However, they don't know how to push back against it. They
Mm.
don't. And so what I have been trying to do is one, trying to start an education coalition. What
Okay.
is that? Education coalition is parents, grandparents, teachers. It's just everyday people that have a true concern and a true love for children to be successful and to have quality education. I feel that if we band together and we come and we talk about what we want education to look like for our children, what we want them to learn, then that's an action step that we can come together, not just talk about it, but we come and say, okay, we're going to do this. When you talk about banned books, yes, the library should be empty. So my thing would be, then let's come up with a plan that if that's the case, let's do that, because then that would unify us. And it would say, hey, if you're going to do it here, you're going to do it here, which we know is not going to happen. So then it would turn it around and make people see that this is not allowed. We can also come up with other strategic methods to push back against this legislation. One of the things I said when it comes to our history, if they don't want to teach it in school, which we know should be taught, let's pull it to our community. About like 2 years ago, I wrote a resolution that asks for organizations such as, say, the NAACP, the National Council of Negro Women, our sororities, our fraternities, our churches, community organizations to come together, get the curriculum, and not just African American history, but history, our culture in general, starting from when we all were in Africa, when we were kings and queens, when we already had the skills that they brought us over here to do for them, and how successful we were. Start teaching there. Teach the bad part too. Teach it all, because I believe that knowledge is power.
Yes.
So when you know where you come from, it helps you to figure out where you're going.
Exactly, exactly. And I remember having that discussion with you about 2 years ago, at CBC, as a matter of
Yes.
fact. And you were talking about this is something that you'd like to do. So now you mentioned your coalition. So what I want you to do is make sure before we end that you share your information of how people can join your coalition, who they need to reach out to, or that sort of thing. We need to make sure that we can get that information and get as many people active. Part of what we do here at RER and ACR is advocacy. And so I agree that we need to be stronger advocates for our community. And we want to make sure that we encourage all of you that are in listening voice to make sure that you vote for your interests. And voting is important, but we want to make sure that you understand that there are still, again, some measures that are being used to affect our ability to vote. So those of you who have not done so already, make sure that you sign up to receive your mail-in ballots if you have not received your mail-in ballots yet, because you have to sign up every year now. New legislation, again, that's affected us. Make sure you check your signature, and you can update all of that through your local elections departments. Make sure you update your signature. We don't want you to exercise your right to vote and then your vote be invalidated. So that's something I want to make sure that you all know. You were about to say?
And yes, because I'm glad that you brought up that, because yes, you do need to register to get your your vote by mail ballot every year. And why do you have to do that? That was under attack simply because it was working. We have been pushing for people to come out and vote, and our numbers had been growing, growing exponentially. They have been really getting large. And so strategically, they said, we're going to create policy to make it a little bit more difficult. And so I hate it when people say that their vote don't count, because if your vote did not count, you would not have the policies being created to hinder your vote. So your vote do count.
Thank you so much, Representative Robinson, for giving us all of this food for thought. Voting matters, and our advocacy matters. So we need to make sure that we are participating in the coalition that she spoke of. We'll make sure that you get access to that information. We want to make sure that you go out and vote. Make sure that you're registered to vote. Make sure that you update your address. Make sure you update your signatures. All of those things matters in order for us to make the changes that we need and put people in office so that we can have the proper representation and that we vote our interests. I'd like to thank you all for joining us on this Wellness Wednesdays on this very, very salient topic that we discussed today with our distinguished guest, State Representative Felicia Robinson. And I encourage you to join us next time. And as always, when signing off, I'd like to say to you, do always do the right thing.